Hello, CSL. How's it going this morning? Or should I say this afternoon to some of you guys? It's morning for me. Coach Fury here. We're back today with another end of season interview with one of the general managers in the league. And today we're going from East Conference to West Conference, and we're going to talk about the LA Lakers. So we have on the line Tim from the LA Lakers. Tim, how's everything going for you?
Going good.
Great, great. So, yeah, we same sort of interview sort of layout as we had discussed last time with Willie and the Orlando Magic. Just going to delve into some of the minds of some of the general managers around the league and their teams and what the expectations were at the start, how it went through the season, the storylines that came up, what happened, was it as expected, and then delving into the off-season plans for the teams. So Tim, I guess it's interesting for you to start probably even before the start of the season and actually go back to the draft time, to the off season, where you made a couple of quite dramatic changes to the LA Lakers, a team that was probably stuck in a rebuild mode. Just drafted Papagiannis from Greece.
Actually, we originally drafted Skull.
Ah, sorry,
Uh,
yes, you drafted
yeah,
Skull. Yes,
yeah,
yes, okay. Yes, he drafted Skull Labrisseri, and things looked like they were sort of starting to turn around. It was going to be a bit of a slow rebuild. You then made some dramatic changes, and do you want us to take us through the thought process for some of these changes and sort of highlight some of the player moves?
yeah. I'll start off. Originally, the first trades I had agreed to were was the one that where I was picking up Alex Len from the Miami Heat for basically cap space in a second, and there might have been Um, and then there was a second move where I did cap in a second for RJ Hunter. And the idea was, that RJ Hunter would be would be a shooter scorer we needed who had efficiency, especially from 3 point range. Alex Len would be an upgrade in the post, um, so we would improve. And we still had some cap, not as much obviously, but we still had some. And then we made that huge Kevin Durant trade, and the KD trade. Um, I knew it was risky, but I was fine making it at the time. Making it at the time, my impression was that we would contend for a late playoff seed. I've never had a top 5 player in the CSL. So I thought, well, here's my chance to go after one. And that was before I and the rest of the league realized, oh, Durant isn't a top 5 player anymore. But, I thought the price was perfectly fine. Zizic and Lyles are both complete trash, in my opinion. And I knew them. I didn't think the Minnesota Timberwolves would make the playoffs. I didn't think they would be that good, but there was no way in hell they were going to be a bottom 5 team. I projected them to be late lottery, probably around 12 or 14. I felt like people were really underestimating the Timberwolves, really underestimating the ability Roxy has to just maximize the talent out of his roster. Um, and then, with my, pick next year, I thought, well, we'll still have KD. Um, we'll be okay. We'll be fine. Um, and then, so I was technically in shifting towards a win now mode. The problem was that I didn't follow that move up with win now moves. I, you know, uh, paid way too much money for Shane Larkin, who I thought was going to be, a huge upgrade at the guard positions for us. That didn't pan out. So, yeah, I think we went something like 6-10 uh, you know, in November, and that's when I realized, well, I should probably
Yeah,
look through
so
that.
so Tim, let's just
Yeah,
stop you there. Let's just stop you there before you
yeah,
sort of delve
yeah,
into some of the other trades and the actual season itself. I've
yeah,
just got a couple of questions really. I guess so. It sounds like from what you're saying with the off-season trades, the Alex Len and the RJ Hunter trades were sort of made prior to the decision to acquire Durant, and even
yep,
before that, I guess the Lakers Celtics trade that you made, moving Scal for Papagiannis, was that again before the Durant trades? All of this was prior to thinking you were acquiring Kevin Durant.
this was after. This was after
Okay,
KD. And that trade, it was a situation of, I actually had Scal and Papagiannis rated pretty equally on my board. I had a very tough time deciding between the two. Um, Scal does a lot of things that I absolutely love. I love the storyline, and my intention was keeping him. And then Dennis comes to me and suggests Papa, and the pick that we've got this year for Skull. And I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it because just in terms of potential, Papagiannis is a legitimate two-way player with no weaknesses except for basketball IQ. That's really his only red flag. Um, whereas Scar, looked terrific offensively. He's got, amazing handles. Looked like a scorer even before the scoring boost happened. Great shooting, etc. Very much an offensive player. Not nearly as good on the defensive end. Decent on the defensive end, but Papagiannis, in terms of potential, far exceeded him there. So it was a very close call. So for me, this was a case of, okay, I was split between the two to begin with. This way, I still get one of the two guys I liked the best. Plus, I get a draft pick on top of it.
yeah. So then you kind of you went in. You obviously had the Durant moves. You made some moves to basically to try and balance out the roster a little bit and
Yeah.
kind of went into the season, everyone kind of expected, from if you're looking at the preview that's up on the screen, everyone expected the Lakers to be around a late playoff seed, competing with the likes of Oklahoma, Portland, New Orleans, Memphis, the usual sort of suspects in that lower end of the Western Conference.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I figured we would be. I personally thought we'd be like a 7 or 8 seed. So yeah.
So what kind of style of basketball did you expect this roster to play with Durant and Adams and Larkin and acquiring Papagiannis in the draft? And how did you expect it all to mesh together? What sort of basketball did you expect this team to go out and play night in, night out?
I expected to be submitting a new depth chart sub matrix pretty much every game. The idea being that I would bounce Durant around the lineup, depending on pretty much any position except point guard,
Hmm.
and just kind of bounce him around, put him on the opponent's either their weakest defender or their lowest disciplined player, and then just ride KD to victory as much as possible.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on that. It kind of didn't go quite to plan to begin with. You had a sort of poor start to the season, bit of up and down. It actually led to you to walking away from the team for a period, and that kind of didn't help the situation. The team carried on bottoming out. You then came back for a period. There were rumours of you going to Philadelphia. Don't know if you want to enlighten anyone in the league on sort of what happened there in terms of coming back. Was Philadelphia a realistic option, or was it just an option to try and get you back into the Lakers hot seat? Or
Well, let me back up a bit, and because before I left, I had traded KD for Middleton and Woods. So We should probably go back and look at that first.
Yeah.
So yeah, after that 6-10 November, I decided, okay, I'm going to have to trade Durant before he gets injured. He's clearly not a top 5 player anymore after all the injuries and stuff like that. So I was just kind of sitting around, waiting to see what offers came in. And this trade really appealed to me. Um, I love Jordan Adams, great defender. Um, and when we had Jeremy Lin and Jordan Adams was at shooting guard, Adams' shooting percentages were absolutely fantastic for that half season. Then in that summer free agency, Lin leaves, and then we're back to Napier, Larkin, somebody at point guard, and Adams' percentages absolutely crashed. Um, so I realized, okay, that great shooting ad with this, that was a function of having Lynn next to him. Now he's back to his old percentages. And Larkin was just a free agent mistake on my part. So this was an opportunity for me to clear out my free agency and off-season mistakes, bring in a guy in Middleton who let's just see if he's a guy that we can build around. Um, Christian Wood rejected my RFA max offer and then signed with Memphis and then the Kingston match, which I'm still fuck you, Christian Wood, for that. But then he finally came in this trade. Daniel Miller, I was like, okay, he's a decent backup. He's kind of like Len in that he's not going to be fantastic, but he's going to be solid enough all around that he can be a contributor. So this was a trade that I thought was going to work out pretty well for us in terms of building for the future.
Yeah, and so the trade was made, and the team was there an improvement, or was it still business as usual in terms of the early prediction of being a late playoff seed? This trade may have bumped you back up with getting some more depth and some different types of quality players in Middleton and Wood, or was it still a downward trajectory for the Lakers?
Um, that's difficult to answer. Uh, Based on what we did with our late season play after I came back, um, it wouldn't have been we wouldn't be talking about Boston having a top 5 pick right now. Um, Realistically, we'd be talking about somewhere in the 10 to 14 range would probably be my guess. Um, because I left the CSL because I had been employed for months, wasn't finding a job, so I was like, I'm just gonna have to quit CSL, really concentrate even harder on finding a job, and
Yeah, sure. So then you kind of stood out and you decided to come back, and there was a rumor going around that you were going to have the be in the run in for what was the Philadelphia hot seat, which many would probably argue was a more entertaining and slightly better situated franchise at this point. Was this a realistic option, or was this just a card that was being thrown out there to try and get back into the Lakers?
I personally considered it a realistic option. Philadelphia is in a situation where they've had an inattentive GM for years. Their roster is a complete jumble of parts that don't match. This upcoming offseason is very critical for them in a number of ways, which I detailed in one of the 50 million articles I wrote about Philadelphia. Um, so I thought this was kind of a realistic scenario. Now, it was a very strange confluence of events because right after I got the job, so I could come back to the CSL because I don't have to worry about being employed anymore. The Lakers got a new GM, and I was looking at coming back to like all within like 2 days of each other. So naturally, a lot of people are suspicious about this and saying, "Oh, it's just because the Lakers got a new GM, blah blah blah." No, it's that I got a job and the Lakers got a new GM at the same damn time. It was that weird sort of confluence of events. Um, so I thought Philadelphia was a realistic option. Like I said, they're in a very tricky spot, very critical off season coming up. And I thought it was a good situation for me to take over the team, completely tear it down, refigure it, reconstruct it. Um, and the basic upshot from the higher ups was, based on the situation, blah, 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 blah. You know, we essentially you have two options. One, the new Lakers GM can decide to take over Golden State or stay with the Lakers. Um, and by the way, Philadelphia still has a GM, not very active, but still has a GM. Um, it's kind of like, well, decide. We'll let the Lakers' new GM decide what to do. If he decides to move to Golden State or something like that, then you take over the Lakers. Otherwise, you can wait till the off season and decide what to do then.
So
And I'm like,
do you at that point do you feel you were a little bit frozen out by the league, I guess, in terms of a difficult situation, but obviously coming back, but being one of the more active general managers when you've been here previously, and the quality of articles that you put out, was that a little bit? Was it a little bit of a sting for you? Or were you kind of at that point understanding, quite content about the situation?
no, I mean, I completely understood the situation because, you know, it, what a lot of people I think don't realize when they complain about what an admit does in a multiplayer league. Doesn't matter if it's DDS, FOF, OOTP, whatever. When you're the admin of a sim sports league, every single decision that you make sets a precedent, which then future situations will be judged by. So, this is a very thorny, sticky situation, and the admins had to keep in mind, okay, what sort of precedent is this going to set? So, I completely understood where they were coming from. It made perfect sense. I think Philadelphia would have been a very interesting destination. Would have been exciting to shift conferences and kind of start fresh, but I'm fine that the new Lakers GM decided to go back to shift over to Golden State, and by the way, then ended up quitting, um, and then I came back to the Lakers.
Yeah,
But
and you came back, and I guess the season kind of probably moderately improved, but as we mentioned, the Lakers pick obviously came top five, and is with Boston. You finished with a 23-59 record, and was there anything in terms of obviously the season didn't pan out as initially planned, but were there any positives that came out from the roster that gave you some hope going into this off season?
well, I'll note that we had a 9-8 March when I came back. And we didn't do quite as well in April. But overall, when you look at what happened after I came back and I was able to make some adjustments, the team played a lot better. It really hit the shitter and started accumulating all those losses when they had no GM.
Mm-hmm.
So there was nobody who needed to do the tweaking and monitoring to develop the sort of wins that a roster of this talent level should have. I mean, realistically, in terms of talent, it's probably a mid late lottery team. Going into the off season. Um, Obviously, the biggest positive is Chiek Diallo. Um, when I took him with that second round pick, I was like, he was the best of what was left. I wasn't really excited about him. I saw him as purely a rebounding specialist who could draw fouls, but who wouldn't have the scoring rating for that to really matter much. So I was kind of like, eh. And then he completely blows up in training camp. He has an amazing preseason, and he essentially wins the starting power forward situation coming out of preseason. And in any other year with a draft class that's not as deep as this one was, he would be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. You know, 10 points, essentially 7 rebounds, essentially a steal per game, uh, shooting 49.4%, which is way higher percentages than I expected based on his shooting ratings. So he was a huge find, huge surprise. And to me, he was really the sort of crown jewel of the season. And I think really the only true positive that came out of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, if we go back to that draft, he was the one that in the youth league that Dennis put together, he was the one that stood out in all of those games for me when we were looking through that. And I actually tried to get back into the second round to try and acquire him just based on that, really, because I thought it'd be a really interesting storyline. But his scoring bump has certainly helped him and probably turned him into what was looking at a seventh, eighth man on the roster to actually possibly being a borderline, 25, 26 minute per game guy at the moment. So yeah, great storyline. Good to see that he's getting some love in Lakers land, but great to see. So I guess season panned out. Obviously, the draft pick that you could have had has gone to the Celtics. In terms of the off season, what are the plans for the Lakers?
We do have a few trades lined up. Um, we're obviously trading out Middleton with the very heavy rumor being for our pick back. Um, and we are also doing a trade similar to what we did last off season with the Len and the RJ Hunter trades, where we dealt. We're essentially dealing cap space and a second round pick for a player that I think he's very interesting. I do not know how he will do with us. Um, but it's a player that I've wanted to get my hands on for a very long time, and I've regretted passing on him in his draft. And so now he'll come in and be in a situation where he will be the top dog on a very shitty team. So I mean that will be interesting to watch. And like I just posted, we traded Marcus Page for someone who is not a point guard. So as of right now, we will have no point guards on our roster after the announcements, unless I draft one, which I might. I might not. We'll have to see how the draft shakes out. Um, I wouldn't count on us being big players in free agency or anything. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is using our considerable cap space. I think we'll be at about something like 17, 18, 19 million, something like that. And we're just going to sit there and we're going to max all the good RFAs in the class and force teams to match max RFA offers. But in terms of actual talent, nah, not looking to do that. We're in true rebuild mode now. So
Okay, so we've fully knocked everything down in complete rebuild now. In terms of the off season, I guess so. You mentioned about free agency. I just want to go back a bit to the actual draft. So you have the
Yeah.
23rd pick. Do you have in your head, two or three guys who you think will be around there already, or is it something you're still mulling over with the combine results coming out yesterday? Is it still up for grabs who you might take there?
Well, I've got a short list of players that that I'm definitely considering. Um, but I think this is also one of those drafts where how it's going to play out beyond the first three picks, assuming, ironically, Philadelphia does the very stupid move of drafting Lonzo Ball, who, in my opinion, is the third, maybe the fourth best point guard in the draft, and really should be a late lottery, mid first pick. Has no business being in the top three. Um, you know that will play out how it does, and the from about pick four on, is going to be a real crapshoot. There's a lot of talented players in this class, and you never know what's going to happen vis-a-vis the draft, especially this year. Simply because there's so much talent across so many different positions, and it's hard to predict exactly what teams are going to do. Um, Personally, I see this as a draft where, based on the level of talent available and the distribution of picks, etc., I see a lot of teams going for need and fit with their picks as opposed to BPA. Uh, that's how diffuse and spread out the talent is. That teams will be able to afford to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, and I think um, sitting at pick 23, it's providing you scouted, which sounds like you have, based on the list that I saw yesterday of teams that haven't scouted who have picks. You could well be getting a steal at even as low as 23 in this draft. So worth watching, see who you pick, worth seeing that comes up beforehand, and it will be a fascinating draft for many reasons. So great to hear about the team and the season and next year's projection with sort of a rebuild going to be a slow burner season for you. I thought we'd just finish off with a couple of interesting facts that I'm going to ask you about for the Lakers this season. So
Okay.
got a couple of things. So hopefully you haven't got anything open, but just going to ask you who some of the leading guys were on your team this year. It may be for good reasons, it may be for bad reasons, just to see if you can get them. So easy one to begin with. Who scored the most points in the Lakers jersey this year?
Who scored the most points in the Lakers jersey this year? Well, by default, that's going to be Shabazz Napier because
Yeah, yeah,
because yeah, yeah.
it was. Yeah, obviously you would think it's Middleton, but obviously with the season trade, not all of his points were scored in Lakers, so it was Shabazz Napier. So who had the most steals this year?
The most steals. Ta, ta, ta. I want to say I think that was Napier as well.
Yeah, so Napier again, 208 steals. So he kind of led the line for you guys for most of the season, mainly due to the trades, but fairly good season from him. So a couple of other ones which are slightly different. So who took the most charges for the team this year?
The most charges. Oh shit. I'm gonna say it was probably Napier again.
No, it was Schroder with 40 charges.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, interesting thing about Schroeder. He was actually a very pleasant surprise for me. He started off playing point guard, wasn't doing that well for us, and then I switched him over to shooting guard and put Napier at point guard, and we started getting a lot more wins then. And because I put Middleton as the backup point guard for a sim just to test it out. Didn't realize until much later, like before the last game of the season when I submitted my last DC, that I never changed that out. So Schroder was playing something like 45, 43 minutes a game at at shooting guard and point guard because I don't know why. Probably because I had Middleton as the backup point guard and Middleton wasn't available, so the game plugged Schroder in as the next point guard up.
Yeah,
But
and he's a player who hasn't he's bounced around a little bit and kind of has never really done anything to sort of stand out, possibly because he has been playing at the wrong position for him.
yeah, but his his shooting numbers improved at shooting guard. I noticed he's done very well in the playoffs compared to his regular season numbers. So if I was a team that was a contender or even a playoff bubble team in free agency, he'll be 28, just entering his prime. He would be a guy I would really look at picking up. His defensive metrics are great. Um, he has combo guard ability now that he's proven, and he's a guy you can lock up for, 4 seasons, and really kind of shuffle him around the backcourt as you need him. And he probably has some prep work that could be done on him to raise his regular season percentages higher and get him into that 42, 43% shooting range at the very least. Kind of similar to what we did with Shabazz Napier. We did a bunch of prep work on him over the seasons while he was here, and Napier's shooting percentage is really improved as well. So I think Schroder can be another example of that. If there's a playoff team that has the instructions available and has a spot for him on the roster.
Yeah, interesting. Nice pitch there for a trade for the off season. So the final one that I wanted to finish up with is so who had the most technical fouls for the Lakers this year?
I have no idea, but I'm going to say Christian Wood because just fuck that guy. He annoys me.
No, not quite. It was the rookie sensation for the Lakers, Sheik Diallo, with 3 technical fouls this year.
Interesting.
So yeah, he obviously had a good season. Obviously, getting quite aggressive in some of the games. So great to have you on, Tim. Great to hear about the Lakers and the off season. Lots of things happening in terms of the Lakers and the rebuild. Lots of interesting trades coming up. We'll see where Middleton goes. But it's been great to have you on and great to find a little bit about the Lakers this season.
Yeah, definitely.